Welcome to the Impassioned Marriage podcast with David Feldman. And today I have a very special guest, Leila Tomasone. And Leila and I are going to be discussing an article that was put out by an online psychotherapist where a reader of hers was writing in asking about how she could be more appealing sexually to her boyfriend. And Leila and I are both going to react to this article, and which we'll share the story of. And yeah, we're just going to pick up in the middle of our great conversation. It's a fantastic listen. And we're just hoping that everybody gets a lot out of this, especially if you're having a relationship issue that mimics this, where perhaps your partner isn't responding to you the way that you'd like. So yeah, buckle up and have a great listen.
The story is a case where a woman is writing into an online psychotherapist and sharing with her that her boyfriend, I believe it's her boyfriend, doesn't find her sexy. And he finds her attractive for her qualities, but he doesn't really look at her as this hot vixen and, a woman who he's really lusting after. She's she gets the job done. Basically, that's the energy that he's putting out there upon questioning. I'm not sure that he walks up to her every day and says, "You're just mediocre," but I think it sounded like as if she was querying him and asking him and kind of trying to get feedback. And this is the feedback that she was getting, that she was, mediocre. And it doesn't sound like it only happened once. It sounds like the boyfriend had said this to her over the course of several years and several times. And in their relationship, she was just never viewed as somebody sexy. She wasn't undesirable. It's just that, he had shown a woman can tell when a man is kind of enamored and lusting, so to speak, or finds another woman very attractive. I mean, women have, that's like shark, that's like blood in the water. Like with the shark.
Right.
They can tell it right away. So she obviously sees that this man does have sexual vibes and can pick up on sexy women, but he doesn't look at her like that. And he even admits that. And so she's writing into the psychotherapist and how she can turn that around, because not only does she want that energy from her boyfriend, but in reality, she, underneath what she exposes within the relationship, underneath that kind of way that she's showing up, she actually does want to be more sexual, and she does want to experiment more, and she does want to have a more vibrant, exciting sex life. And so she's writing into the psychotherapist online of how she can turn this kind of this label that she has in this relationship around.
Yeah, I want to know what you were disappointed about in this.
Well, a few things. I mean, the first thing is, as a mental health professional, as a therapist, the golden rule is that we never diagnose somebody who we haven't met. That's just basic, and the first thing she starts out with is that your boyfriend is a narcissist. That's terrible advice, in my opinion. Very unprofessional, terrible advice. And, just leading towards the demise of this relationship, which didn't sound like where the client wanted to go. The client actually was looking on how to be a better partner to her boyfriend. And the first thing she gets is, scrap all that. I have no idea who he is, but I can guarantee you that without meeting him and hearing his side of the story, he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, she's not, in no way does she evaluate what this woman's role is in creating that situation.
Yeah.
She doesn't hold her in any sense accountable for her own behavior. She doesn't encourage her to step up and improve. And instead, she just continues to point the finger at the boyfriend. Now, granted, I happen to think that, some of the things that the boyfriend said were cruel, if that's what he actually said. I can't tell you how many times when I work with couples, one person says that they heard one thing and the other person said, "I never said that," or "I never meant that," or "Your understanding of what I said is completely not in line with who I am and, what I've been trying to get across to you." So for her to just take at face value everything that this woman is saying and suggest such a radical solution, which is to dump him and he's a narcissist, without in any way examining. And what was interesting is that the woman actually wanted a little bit of exploration in what she could do better. That was actually how she started. So it behooves, to me, it behooves a mental health professional to at least meet the client where they're at, and help her and encourage her to, step up where she herself is wanting to grow. I don't know. What do you think? That's just my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you're saying. And I think you're totally right because in my experience, when you talk to a woman like that who is, maybe the guy is a jackass and a narcissist, but she wants to please him and work on their relationship together. And if you tell her something different than that advice, she just doesn't want to do it. Like she just, she wants to, like, that's, you have to meet someone where they're at. I guess that's what you said essentially. But just in remembering women who came to me with those kind of questions, however offended I was at his behavior, it didn't fix the problem that she's asking for a solution to.
Right. For sure. For sure. So let me ask you a question. Working with women, if a woman came up to you and asked you the same question that she's asking the therapist online, how do I show up as sexier for my husband or my boyfriend? What would you say?
So I have so many thoughts. I mean, one thought is like you mentioned that it sounds like she's asking him. She's like trying to pull this stuff out of him. And so, a lot of men can have a tendency to like come across just dry. I'm just going to give you the facts of what you're asking me for without any like fluff around it, trying to consider how that's going to affect you and like what the impact is going to be around your feelings. And if it is hurting your feelings, I would probably tell her to stop asking those questions, and not stop working on being sexier, but don't keep prodding and looking for the responses that are going to hurt you. And and I think if that you decrease the hurtful probing and increase the other things that are going to boost your confidence and maybe boost your sexiness, that the two things in contrast, the difference between those dynamics would definitely become noticeable, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, I also agree with you. The less you talk about the relationship, and just do, the better your relationship is going to be. So I think you're right. Looking for validation, especially repeated validation for something she's been hurt from in the past, is not going to bring close to, it's probably going to make him uncomfortable. And then if he feels like, there's some people that just feel like, oh, well, I have to be honest, so
Right.
he goes and he tells her, and maybe the truth is, maybe he's also a little bit disappointed, maybe, which I think is fairly common. I don't, it must be hard, and maybe as a woman you can speak to this, but it must be hard for women because, we live in a society where we're inundated with sexualizing females. So your regular woman who's, just a regular, let's just say she's just a regular, pretty, healthy, connecting woman, probably feels inadequate, even just walking down the street, even with like the bus posters and the billboards, and maybe there's some sort of ad playing somewhere in a mall where even if you walk past a Victoria, I remember walking with my wife in these malls as we'd walk past Victoria's Secret, my wife would go like this. I had not even noticed the thing, but she's just like this, so I can imagine that just your average woman who is a beautiful wife, connecting very lovely, intimately, with her husband, would feel inadequate. So I don't blame this woman for feeling like, wow, maybe I need to up my game, would you agree that that's something that's affecting women today?
Oh, definitely. There's so much opportunity for comparison. I mean, if you think about like how we might have operated within like an old fashioned like community, like we've only got like so many people to compare ourselves to, right? But now with the internet and TV and ads and everything, like we have to compare ourselves to the best of the peak and the airbrushing and the filters and everything. I mean, that's just a ridiculous like amount of um weight to just heap on your own perception of yourself. And yeah, and so asking him, just poking and prodding at that, like it's kind of masochistic, right? Like you're setting yourself up for hurt, and maybe you should be questioning like, why am I doing this? Why do I keep setting myself up? And maybe that's could be like in a way of avoiding actually working on the problem. If you need to get to the gym or you need to eat better, like maybe spend more time on that instead of the comparisons and the fights and things like that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, because as we all know, there's no winning answer that he can give that's going to make her happy. If he says what he said, then he ends up on an article online. he ends up being called a narcissistic jackass online. And then if he says to her what she wants to hear, of course, women are going to know that he's not being authentic or genuine, or he has to betray his own experience. Which is not fair for him either. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know if like maybe let's assume that she is kind of doing like stirring up some of this, right? And like trying to get him to hurt her in a little bit of some subconscious way. That to me says that she's not ever going to see it from his actual genuine point of view, right? Like he may have in his mind that he doesn't want a pinup girl or a vavavoom kind of woman. Maybe he really loves the girl next door kind of cuteness, and that's really what gets him going, but if she's just looking to make him the villain or to set herself up for like what she already feels insecure about already, we go and ask our partner to validate, but maybe we're validating what we already don't like about ourselves, right?
Oh,
And
that's really deep. That's really deep. Yeah, for sure. I
yeah.
could see that happening for sure. And maybe she's looking to get support for that. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, that would probably be very helpful working with clients to look at it from that perspective, where it's like, to what extent are your complaints about your partner just merely reflections about yourself that you're looking to get buy-in on, or you're too afraid to take that step to break out of your own mold, so you're looking for your partner to kind of pigeonhole you into the exact negative impression you have about yourself. Yeah,
right, definitely, I see that a lot.
mm-hmm. Well, what would you say, like, let's just say, let's get into the meat of the topic. Like, if a woman said, okay, I'm healthy, he's healthy, this and that, but I want to act more like a pinup girl or whatever you referred it to. Like, I want to be like this woman in the article. She definitely said that she wants to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to sidetrack just for 1 second, because I do have this tweet about this phenomenon, which I think is just really funny. A woman will show up in a relationship in a certain way and then get upset at her husband for not noticing or not bringing out from her this more exotic, more sexual side. And then she'll let that fester between him and her and then divorce him. And then you see all these articles about, I just divorced my husband, I'm exploring my sexuality, and I'm really taken off, and I'm experiencing everything. And I always tweet, whenever I see these articles, I'll just quote tweet it and just be like, if you would have put 1/10 of that energy into your actual marriage, just 1/10, not even all of it, just 1/10, you would have had a great relationship. And so here's a woman trying to avoid, that whole that's one of the reasons why I was so disappointed in this psychotherapist's response, because here's this woman trying to avoid doing exactly that, showing up as like this prudish kind of self self-conscious woman within the context of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then she doesn't want to break up with him and then find herself sexually afterwards, which may have been something that everybody wanted within the relationship. So I didn't like what their therapist responded, because that's not fair. But how would you advise a woman who really does want to break out of her role and, like I said, the label or the stereotype that she's been put into in this particular way? What would you tell them to do?
I use this approach with a lot of things, but I think Pinterest is great for like figuring out like a whole picture of, what it would look like to be whatever she's imagining. You got it in your head, but can you really like see a full picture of it? And I think that's a good exercise. Like, what I'm saying, like pick out somebody that you want to look like or want to have the energy of, like that probably is a lot more than, there's a lot involved in that, whether it's like hair, makeup, outfits, poses. I mean, there's just so much available online for tutorials of every type. I mean, you can get belly dancing lessons, you can get twerking lessons, like you can find everything, right? So if you find like a specific like persona that you want to aspire to, like, some people are never going to be like a Marilyn Monroe type, and that's an old example, but some people are never going to be like a Sofia Vergara type, but you have to like pick a type that you could aspire to. Like maybe it's I don't know, more of like a Taylor Swift or whoever. And
Yeah,
then
it could be anything. It could be like an
pick.
Audrey. It could be like an Audrey Hepburn type. Very different,
Sure.
but also
Yeah.
very beautiful and alluring and attractive.
Right. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
million different types. And so if you like explore, like maybe make a board, like a vision board or Pinterest board, and like just, start picking like outfits and looks that you want to emulate, then you can start putting together, what do I need for this? How do I need to, do my makeup and experiment with, looking, posing in the mirror, that kind of thing.
sure.
Um, so that's what I would suggest.
Cool, cool. So your first step would be to visualize, to create like a visualization um, exercise where they would say, okay, let's flesh out let me define and flesh out the character they want to become. Okay.
Right.
Now, let's just say a woman does that, right? So let's just say she, starts dressing in a certain way, or, starts um, perceiving herself from a new light. How does she, let's answer this lady's question. How does she, so her husband's going to see a little bit about that. He's going to notice, husbands aren't the most noticing in the world, but they're also not, dead men walking. I mean, we do actually
Yeah.
have eyes and we can actually see things. So even though it may look a little strange to us, but what would you, in terms of the relationship itself, how would a woman, because I know you and I have talked about this a long time ago, and I may have a different perspective as a man, just because for most men, if we want to change, or if we want something, we become that thing and just talk about that thing, and then we just do it. Like that's just who we are, and it just seems like ABC. That's why you have the rise of Andrew Tates and Jordan Petersons and all these different people, because they're just basically telling men what to do, and men are eating it up because that's how we function. But
Mhm.
you've explained to me in the past that oftentimes doesn't necessarily work for women. They work in a different way, and especially regarding intimacy and sexuality, especially since women are traditionally taking the more passive role. What would you suggest to a woman who really does want to break out of the traditional roles that she's had with her husband and try something new? In addition to the vision exercise, what would you say would be like the next step, or kind of more concrete in terms of the relationship itself?
Well, one thing you just reminded me of that I thought of earlier was that you said like let's spend less time talking about the relationship, right? And so more constructive than asking him questions would be just trying things out and watching his reaction, right? And what gets positive. Because I think that's what you're sort of getting at, is that we need a lot more validation and reinforcement to our changes to keep them going than like a man who's he's just headed to that point B or whatever, and he's gonna get there no matter what.
Right.
So yeah. So one uh moment in the day that I think is especially powerful is like when a man gets home from work, and like how you can like set the stage. You can have like the whole house be, geared towards whatever mood you're trying to set, right? So, candles, music, food cooking, air freshener, like fragrances, things like that. And so I think if when there's times like that he can walk in and see like a whole stage that you've set, then that could be like a good way to get him to notice, I think. Like you
For
walk up
sure.
to him with you walk up to him with like his favorite whiskey drink or whatever. Like that's when he could like really, I think, absorb it. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
yeah.
answers.
Well, that's very good. And it is interesting to me that like um I think those are of course great ideas. I mean, setting the mood, setting the tone. And I hope that the people who are watching this video notice the difference in my approach as a man and Leila's approach, because no matter how much I'm trying to get out of Leila to, say, quote unquote, just do it, it's almost like she won't. Because it's like women don't just do it. And I'm not saying all women, but I can't tell you how many times, I've been approached, and one of the things I tweet about recently is, women that are in sexless marriages, and it's really upsetting to them. So one thing I say to them is, okay, well, do you try to have sex with your husband?
Oh, okay. I see where you're getting at. Okay.
And it's like, well, I'm there. And I said, yeah, but are you are
Okay.
you doing
I think I
anything
understand the
that's gonna,
question.
lead towards sex? And
Right.
she's like, well, what do I do? And
Right.
and, and I just
Okay.
say to myself, I always make that, and I just made it the other day, the same joke online. It was just like, you're asking me. I'm like, you're the lioness and you know how to hunt, and you're asking me to tell you how to hunt. This doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're a woman. I mean, that's what women do.
Mhm.
Like, why are you asking me what you should do? I'm a guy, you know?
Right.
And I
Okay.
just find it
I
so
gotcha.
funny, like that it's just so crazy. And I end up having to like kind of like walk these women through some basic things. It can be very uncomfortable for me. Thank God we don't get too
I got
graphic,
I
but
got
it's just okay. So what's your response to what I'm saying?
Okay, so I think you're saying like how would she actually initiate more sexual
I mean, if
time?
that's what she wants to be, it's just so funny. Like, yeah.
Well, she wants to be sexy. So maybe that's a little, I mean, did she mention that they don't have enough sex, or he just doesn't see her
Well, here,
as
let me tell you what she said. She said, this is what she said. Um, she said, I'm now slowly coming to terms with the idea that I'm not sexual to my husband. He doesn't see me that way, and I'm becoming very jealous
Oh, okay. And she
of other
says,
women. And then she said, let me just finish reading this part of it here so we can get to the actual question. My
mhm.
partner mentioned to me that it would be strange seeing me act sexy, as that's not me. So that's what he said. So he's putting her in this box. And then she says, it seems that he doesn't realize, and then she says, through no fault of his own, as I've very, very clearly submerged this side of me from his view, that I do really, so it seems that he doesn't realize that I do really enjoy sex, enjoy passionate intimacy, and I love experimenting and having fun. And then she says, which he doesn't see at all. And then she says, I am now looking to this year as the year where I come out of my shell and become more sure of myself, my passions, my likes and dislikes, and become more confident in exploring my sexuality as well. But she says, I'm not entirely sure how I can start doing this, and was hoping for some advice on where I could start. And she adds, I also have a terrible fear that I am just outright bad at sex and have searched how to be better at sex, but the search results do not yield the answers I am after.
Okay.
So I'm asking you, Leila, as a woman, and as a therapist, and as a coach for women, if a woman came to you and said, this is, my husband sees me one way, rightfully so, and doesn't realize that I'm really this tiger under the sheets, and this is the year I'm going to come out doing it, but don't know how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because she is kind of vague about it, because like I'm picturing like she wants him to see her as sexy, which I see totally like a different question than how do I be good at sex? How do I show him that I enjoy sex? Those are different questions.
And experiment, and I want to come out.
Yeah. And initiating sex, like those are all separate questions to me. But so to the point of like, how does she show him that she enjoys sex? I mean, that to me is like a huge failure. If she hasn't been showing that and wants to be seen as sexy, like, yeah, that's like a pretty big, like easy place to start. Like, and so my favorite author is Laura Doyle. Yes. And she doesn't cover sex a whole lot in her books, but the one line that she has in her books that I committed to memory was that when you like it, when he's doing something you like, then moan. And when he's doing something that you don't like, stop moaning. So
that's a start.
That's useful, straightforward advice, right? So that's to me, that's very useful. And also
letting him know.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's like counterintuitive to you. Like, why would you need to know that? Right. Because, but I promise you, it happens where women are sending mixed, confusing, I'm sure you've noticed that women are sending mixed, confusing signals, and he's like, what am I doing wrong? Why is this not working, when it seemed like she was, pointing me to do that? And anyway,
that's a whole, that's a whole different conversation of, men are, I wouldn't say men are clueless, but it is very hard to pin down what it is that for many men in many situations, it's hard to actually define what it is that she likes and when she's enjoying something or not. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, because she's sending she's not showing in clear signals. And so that just one or two sentences that I said from Laura Doyle, I think that helps send clear signals, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
Then, so beyond that, how to be good at sex, I find, and I did like a little class on this, like a little very short thing, but it was like, it was about breathing and about how inhalation builds tension and exhalation releases tension, right? So there was even like a Tyra Banks thing, like where she was like, if you want to indicate like sexual tension in a photo, then you inhale, and it's like, oh, there's like this anticipation thing happening, right? And so I think that using those concepts, those two, just focusing on your breath, and whether you're inhaling, holding your breath, or exhaling, will help you as the woman, send the right signals and, create something happening in terms of the sex act itself.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, these are all nice, subtle ways of conveying to your partner that you're engaged in the experience, and this is important. Which, by the way, I feel like as a man, again, we are simple creatures. If we feel that you're enjoying yourself, So if we get the message, the sense that you're enjoying yourself, you're a generous lover, right? Oftentimes, what happens if so I'll just be more specific. So if you are a generous lover, which means that it doesn't feel like you're doing something because you have to, or it doesn't feel like you're trying to control the situation, but you're just really receiving as a woman, and giving also with a warm smile, a loving smile on your face. And we also get the feedback that you are enjoying being together. I think 99% of men will be thrilled. Like,
Mhm.
there's really very little that would be needed more than that energy, you
Yeah.
know, as most men would attest to, never
Yeah.
had a bad, you've never had a bad, most men have never had a bad orgasm. So it's not
Mhm.
about that, it's really
Right.
about the, what's sandwiching that experience. Um,
Yeah.
I think
I
that,
agree.
what was that?
I was just gonna say I agree, and what you're saying, and like the simplicity of the advice that I'm giving is making me realize that it's possible that her questions could be framed in the backdrop of that maybe she thinks she needs to be doing a lot more crazy things and not just enjoying it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then, with regards to new things, one thing that it's important for all of us to remember is that if she's thinking to herself, I'd like more, there's a good chance that he is too. So sometimes we're afraid because we think our partner really doesn't want more, because no one's made that first move. They're too afraid to make the first move, when in reality, you know, even a subtle change up of routine, just even a subtle small one that might not be such a big step, towards, crazy sex, just even a small one. A lot of times you'll get positive feedback from that. So we can just easily build from there. It doesn't have to be like all of a sudden she shows up in a Catwoman outfit and like it all of a sudden goes
Mhm.
crazy like that.
Mhm.
It could be a subtle change. Maybe she even buys, when I was a kid, there was this book that I wouldn't say all, but many adults had. It was called The Joy of Sex. And did you remember that book?
I remember seeing it
On your bookshelf, right? On somebody's bookshelf.
bookshelves.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like basically these black and white, drawings of different ways that people could do it, and explained what, the pluses and minuses were. If you do it this way, it touches this part of her body. And if you do it this way, he has more control. If you do it this way, she's the more dominant. It was
Mhm.
very lovely, kind of, but classy, yet, erogenous. It was a sexual book. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
only very brave people would actually put that on their coffee table when guests come over. Most people wouldn't, but it was on the bookshelf.
Wrong impression.
Yeah, yeah, it was on the bookshelf though, and it just, even such a thing, like you bring something like that into the home. Obviously, if you have kids and stuff, it stays in the bedroom and stuff. But subtle ways, you'd be amazed at the fact that she may be opening up a box for her husband as well, that he's trapped in. And or maybe he tried something years ago, got rejected, and has since then just shut that switch off and said, okay, well, it's missionary once a week, for 5 minutes. That's what she was into back then. And a man can easily pick up the wrong signals. Maybe there's kids and she was thinking about this, or maybe she had a hard day. And as I've tweeted about, and I think you have as well, there's only going to be so many times that you reject a man. Men pick up, again, we're not dunces, so we pick up the signals. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second, but by the third or fourth time, we're just not going to go there anymore. And it's just easier just to shut down and say, okay, well, this is the way she likes it. Again, I have my experience, which always ends up good, right? And that's all I'm going to do. So what do you think about what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a really great point too, is how did it end up, what were the steps to coming to this particular routine? And right, maybe she gave out some misleading signals or what he perceived as rejection, and then voila, now she's pigeonholed, and there's no way of getting out of that box. But right, it's not that hard to just be a little bit different and then see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something I think is interesting. In the dynamics are shifting today's day and age. I think that women would definitely benefit from, we talk about strong, independent, and men are in a different, many men are just in a different mode. They see the woman taking charge of so many aspects of her life and so many aspects of their life, so men will assume that if she's, the way she's, bossing around the family, the kids and him during the day is the same way she is in the bedroom. And I think like what you and I have talked about is that that's not necessarily true. So I think there's plenty of room for women to step up, and that there's a good chance that her husband, will respond very positively to some of these subtle changes, and it's only kind of like after she's tried that and it hasn't worked, do we need to seek, therapy or something, because like even in this article, it didn't sound like she was exasperated that she tried everything she could and her husband's just not responding. It literally sounded like she was just on her first step. Like it was just in her thought, like, I'd like to be somebody different. How do I do that?
Right. Right. So I think the kind of a theme that we're getting at here with both of our perspectives is take small steps, and it doesn't have to be anything too extreme to make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, awesome. Well, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And I don't know if you want to just shout out where people can find you, or if that's something we can include in the video.
Absolutely. Sure. We're both on Twitter, of course. And I also have a YouTube channel, and I'd like to put this up on my channel.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So Limitless Leila is my Twitter or X, whatever the website is called now. And Leila Tomasone is my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Pleasure. And anyone who wants to talk, find me. I'm just my first name, last name at David Feldman on Twitter. That's where all the fun is. And of course, I have a website and a blog, davidfeldman.com. And Leila and I both do programs with couples and singles, marriage, relationship, and we have different approaches, but we solve the same problem: how everybody can have a great marriage and a wonderful connecting life together. So
yeah, thanks so
till
much.
next time. I'll talk to you later.